The devil's a snake. And so because we have these paradigms already established in our mind, that this looks like a snake, the devil's a snake, therefore this is the letter that represents the devil. And it happens, if I got this correct, I think it's the one letter that's not written in the Ten Commandments. More proof that it must be the devil letter. I don't agree, I'm just telling you where some of this stuff goes. But that's the concept. You can see a snake, but see, you don't see a snake in paleo. You just see what it means in paleo is if you have a basket which is full of fruit, the basket's completely full, you can't put any more in. What fruit? Well, the fruit that you picked off the tree. The tree here, which was full of fruit, somehow gets picked and ends up in this basket. The relationship between Zion and Tet then is that this is a tree full of fruit, this is a basket of picked fruit, and somehow in this process it lost its fruit. That's part of another story. But anyway, Tet. Yod, the hand, grabbing a tool, an arm. We're down to 4 minutes here, so I'm going to try to go 3 minutes. I'm trying to go a little quickly, but I'm not going to race through this, actually. I want you to get this. Yod is the working hand. Kaf, in paleo, can be written like that, with 2 fingers. Or to make it easy, sometimes I write it like that because it's easier. But if you try to carve that into a piece of wood, the grain of the wood goes nuts. It just doesn't work. So what some people do is they do that. Well, that became our letter K. But if you see that written like that, it's still the idea of, or it might be written like that. That's still the idea of the open hand. But that's our letter Kaf. So again, Lamed, you can see our letter L, it's like a shepherd's staff. If you remember on vaudeville, they had this hook, right? You either put the hook around it and pull, or you can poke with the other end. So Lamed means push and pull. Mem looks like our letter M. It's like a wave of water. So it's like this water coming in. And I'll stop here at the letter Nun. Nun kind of looks like a lightning bolt, but it's the shape of a fish's tail. If a fish is sitting in the water and you're startled, it kicks its tail and it starts moving. So Nun is what lives in the Mem. So the Mem then is the environment, and the Nun is the living thing within the environment. So the Mem, though it looks like this chaotic force, it's not a static environment. The Nun is the life. The Mem isn't the life. The Mem is what provides for life, and the Nun is the living thing within that otherwise non-live environment. At least life compared to the Nun. Okay, we're going to stop there so that she can change the tape. Drawing with this triangle here, I'll explain that in a bit, but there's a break, there's a transition between this letter and this letter. Of course, you'd never know that in English. But anyway, the concept of the psalmic, they say the word prop, and then we go, well, wait a minute. A trellis, like for a rose bush, where you have lattice work, that's like a prop. But so if you have a tree that needs to be supported with the stake and tied to it, that's a prop. But so is a propeller that spins to make the boat go. Right? That's a prop. So what kind of prop is it? I think it's both. Because on the one hand, one of the ancient forms of writing a psalmic is like that. Well, to me, that looks like the wake of a propeller in the water. And you could say, well, wait a minute, that's a modern invention. They didn't have that in the days of the Phoenicians in ancient Israel. Well, we don't necessarily know that. As a matter of fact, the Phoenicians were known as the seafaring people whose empire influenced the entire world. And they might well have had a prop, for all I know. The prop's not that hard to figure out, actually. in terms of engineering. But anyway, The other way of drawing a prop is like that, which kind of looks like a trellis. Interesting, at the end of our street, they just put up a brand new power pole, one of these big main things, and it looks exactly like this. This thing's probably 60 feet tall. I mean, it's just this giant electrical power, and the wires run. I mean, right at the end of the road, there's this giant somic. So you could think of it as a power pole because it facilitates the electrical wires being run, and we'll get to that in a minute. You could also think of it as a watchtower. You know, you climb this thing to stand up there and look with your spyglass. And I'll get to reasons for that in a bit. But I'm just trying to show you some images that are related to that shape of the somic. So when you see the somic, you think about what the somic means. The ion is an eyeball. It's also a, if you have a well, with that you get water out of, it's a deep well with a spring down below. It's also a fountain that shoots water out, like a geyser. It's both. It's not one or the other. So, like the eye is you can see the depth of the soul in the eye. So the other thing about the ion is it's understanding, it's insight, it's knowledge, it's being able to put things together, it's being able to judge and make a discernment between things. So the eye has to do with being able to see, but it's also these other things which are tied to, you might say, analogies or metaphorically speaking of what an eye represents. A pay then is the mouth. Right? So you can easily see that. That pays the mouth, right? So again, these are like the simplest shapes, and these are all legitimate shapes. I didn't make these shapes up. These are shapes that have been found on various inscriptions somewhere through the period of time, but yet, again, according to Benner or Seekins, one might be from 2000 BC and the other one might be from 1000 BC or somewhere in between. You know, and it almost doesn't matter because it's simply the ancient form. Let me say one other thing about this ancient form. I was talking to one fellow who his whole life is regarding these letters, and he said that, actually it was his wife, she said that they have no regard of the paleo because these represent Canaanite gods. Now that's their disposition, that they represent Canaanite gods. The god represented by the bull, I mean, Aaron got in trouble for making a golden bull, right, at the base of Mount Sinai. And whether it's a camel god and the god of portals, you know, the god of enlightenment, whatever it is, as far as they're concerned, these so much look like objects that they want nothing to do with them, because there's a commandment that says, make no image of anything in heaven above and earth beneath or that are in the seas under the earth. Therefore, because the paleo letters look like objects, that's why these are called flame letters. They don't look like objects, they're like flames. And what I was about to say before, the letter Yod, this shape here, is that this is like a flame point. And this is like a flame point. You go from a flame is like a spark of life, and then it disappears. So that's also like this flame. So the Chaldean flame letters, like I said, Daniel was the chief Chaldean, the chief magi, but that's why they're called flame letters. So in this particular font, I tried to make the point to put this little flame flourish on the top of each letter, because they said that the significance of the Hebrew is that you'll see these little flame flourishes, which some people call tittles, jots and tittles. The jots, people say, are the smallest letter, like the Yod, and the tittles are the flourishes that are on the letters, like the little flame points. Well, according to some research that Monty Judah has done, he has a different opinion, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. one of the other sections. But anyway, the point is, there's something about the flame quality which is more ethereal. Therefore, it's kind of conceptual and not material, not object. These are object related, these are more concept ethereal. And the point of going back to the paleo is to have a mechanism of translation that we're going to get to regarding Daniel. Okay, so the pei is the mouth. The zadi is a fish hook. So again, that's a pretty basic shape. If you have a spear or like a pike with a hook on it, or like a can opener, or a fish hook with a barb, it's basically the zadi shape. Kuf, if you look at Jeff Benner's kuf, there's a horizon, and there's the sun on the horizon. And what that implies is basically the day's over, evening's coming, it's going to be night. We're at the point of transition. Or it's been night, the sun's just coming up, again, we're at the point of transition. So the kuf speaks about the point of transition. It's also the back of the head. So in the modern, this is the neck, here's the back of the head. The front of the head would be out here. But the kuf shape is the back of the head. It means that which follows. So as you walk past, the thing that follows you is the back of your head, or your heel. So in Yaakov, Jacob, he has this letter kuf, or Q in his name, not the letter C that we would have in English, because his heel, he grabbed at Esau's heel. Whether he was pushing his heel away from kicking him in the head, the way Brad Scott suggests, which sounds pretty good, it might be true, or he was grabbing at his heel, trying to usurp or supplant Esau's birthright, may be true. Nevertheless, the letter kuf is in his heel. I think there's another meaning which is much more wonderful than either of those two, which we'll get to in a little bit. But that's the letter kuf. Resh is then the head of a man. So again, here's his neck, and here's his head. It's also like a flag. That which flies, that which says, okay, here's the place. Here's our territory. This is where we rule. So the Resh is the exalted man, or the prime man, the lifted up one. Now the Gimel has a neck which lifts up, and so it's said that the Gimel is the letter which represents pride, because its head is lifted up. Well, the Resh, his head is also lifted up. So in the different letters, there's other letters, which we'll get to in a few minutes also. Sheen is teeth. So you could say, well, fire has teeth, and fire, but if you eat, you have teeth, which in your mouth. So again, it's that primitive shape. And then Tav, if you have an agreement, you have a contract, and somebody says, okay, here's all the terms of the contract, sign here. And if you don't sign, if you can't write, if you're illiterate, you can just simply write an X, and that counts as an official signature. So X, since ancient days, the shape of the X has always meant, here's the end of the matter, I agree. So the sign of the ancient Tav is the sign of a contract, a covenant, an agreement, and your willing participation in the terms so stated. Okay, so it is just as a quick question here, does anybody have any issue or trouble with understanding the meanings of the letters as they're drawn, so that you can look at the letters and kind of know what they mean? So everybody's kind of at least up to that speed of comprehension, right? Okay, great. Then we'll go from there.